The idea that for women, we have to be pretty and we have to be young and we have to be super supportive because, the only images of women that we see in movies and TV until really recently were, just the super supportive wife or girlfriend, even in the kooky comedies.
Welcome to the Midlife Schmidlife podcast, a show that celebrates women over the age of 40 who want to live a kick-ass life. I'm your host, Liz Applegate, and I'll be bringing you inspiring conversations and practical advice with a little bit of humor and random 80s references mixed in. Join me as we redefine these middle years to start living with newfound joy and purpose while turning our maybe someday dreams into today. Hey, Schmidlifers. Woohoo! It's spring. I love spring. It just brings about feelings of new beginnings and just new possibilities. And because of that, I decided to do a little bit of a new format for the show. I wanted to have a little refresher. I'm loving it so far. I would love to hear from you. Let me know how you like the new intro and the new format. Now, I am so excited, so very excited to share with you today's conversation with meaningful business coach and my friend, Jo Casey. Now, before you think, oh, I don't have a business, this won't apply to me. Instead, I want you to pull up a chair and listen in. We talk a little bit about business, but mostly we talk a lot about what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a woman who is getting older, how society views women as we are aging, and why we need to unlearn our feminine conditioning to live a happy and fulfilled life. Now, feminine conditioning is a term that Jo has come up with that really talks about it's very similar to the good girl rules that I talk about in my coaching. And it's basically all these messages that we get from society and what it means to be a good and proper woman. So as you can tell from this conversation, we are going to dive into some pretty juicy stuff. Jo and I know each other. She's been my business coach. We're in a mastermind together. And so this conversation is really just that. It's like just having a conversation. And so I'm going to be totally straight with you. We talk about politics and the state of the world and our feelings around that. And we are two very passionate women having a very adult conversation. So I just wanted to let you know that you may want to have your headphones in if you are at work. A little bit about Jo. Like I said, she is a business coach, and you can connect with her at jocasey.com. And I also want to share that she just opened enrollment to her Meaningful Biz Academy. And this is an online hub where you'll be able to find courses and coaching and co-working, done for you resources. There's a community involvement in there, community component in there. She has coaching once a month, and it will really be super helpful to get your business up and running fast. This is something that when I look back on all the things that I tried and all the different courses I enrolled in, this is really something that I wished would have been around when I started my business. It really is an awesome thing, and I just can't speak highly of it enough. Right now, she has a charter membership going, and it ends on April 15th. So be sure, head over to themeaningfulbizacademy.com. Now, you'll be able to find the links on how to connect with Jo. Now, you'll be able to find links on how to connect with Jo in the show notes, as well as how to visit the Meaningful Biz Academy. You can go to the show notes, or if you are on Apple Podcasts, which it's now called, it used to be called iTunes, I think, but now it's Apple Podcasts, you can just tap on this episode and you will be able to see links, and you'll be able to to click on those links and go right over there. So now I'm super excited to introduce you to Jo Casey.
Jo Casey, thank you so much for being on the Midlife Schmidlife podcast.
I was so happy to be here. I'm really honored, and I can't wait to talk to you because you're one of my favorite humans on the planet. And
oh my goodness.
So it's going to be great.
That just made my day. Speaking to one of my favorite humans, and for her to say that, that's amazing. So I have started the podcast lately by, I don't know if you can hear my dog whining in the background.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear mine. And I also have not quite so small a child outside my office door at the moment as well, talking to said whining dog. So it's all part of
it's all part
life's
of
rich tapestry.
No kidding. So listeners, just know that we are two moms and two women, and this is just part of it. So anyway, as I was saying, I've been asking my guests a couple questions. And so what I thought that I wanted to ask you is, let's do a little time travel, and we go forward 20 years, and you and I are sitting having this conversation 20 years from now. Hopefully we won't be across the pond but wouldn't it be awesome? So 20 years from now, and if you were to look back at this time of your life, what are you hoping that you see?
Well, first of all, we would be next to each other because surely to goodness they will have worked out teleportation by then.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
So I think there's a couple of things. I think there's on the personal level, but it also fits into the more kind of global level, because right now, as we record, there are students in Florida who are planning to march on Washington, saying enough is enough about gun violence in the US. There are women all over the world who are standing up and saying enough is enough to sexual violence and harassment and the messed up power dynamic that has been allowed to fester and to be the norm. This thing that up until very recently was just was how it was. You know, you didn't complain about certain things because that was just part and parcel of being a woman. And so I hope that we're at a turning point. And so I hope that in 20 years I can look back and say to myself, you were right for finding your voice. You were right for encouraging other people to find our voices, because we were on the cusp, no matter how kind of depressing and bleak it seemed sometimes. That it was that awfulness that started in 2016 with Brexit and Trump. It was those moments of, oh my God, how did this happen? That was the catalyst for so many of us finding our voices and saying enough is enough. And so I hope that what I'm able to say to myself 20 years from now is, we did it and it was worth it. And us collectively finding our voices, us collectively breaking free of these sometimes self-imposed kind of limits that we're putting on ourselves, and sometimes the kind of the much bigger limits that were being put on us as women, as citizens. It was worth it. The standing up and saying enough is enough, even when we felt afraid, even when we felt scared, it was worth it. I hope that's the conversation we're having.
Oh my gosh, me too. Wow. And with the teleportation, of course.
Of course. Yeah.
Oh, so listeners, now you know why I was so excited to have Jo Casey on the show. And I just can't wait to dive into this conversation we're going to have. Before we get started, I know about you. I'm lucky enough to get to hang out with you. But would you please just tell the listeners who you are in the world, what you do, and just let them know a little bit more about you.
Sure. So, as you may be able to tell by my accent, I am British. I live in the northwest of England, in the United Kingdom. I'm a coach, I'm a trainer, and I'm a podcaster as well. I work with service-based businesses like coaches, holistic practitioners, healers, consultants, those are people who work for themselves, selling their own services. And I help them to build businesses that are aligned and ethical, and that help particularly female entrepreneurs to stand up and make themselves heard, because succeeding as a woman in the world, and particularly succeeding as a woman entrepreneur, means violating every single message that's been poured into us about what it means to be a good woman. It's our feminine conditioning. I have this term, I call it our feminine conditioning. You hear my dog barking in the background.
It wouldn't be us having a conversation if Lucy weren't involved.
It wouldn't.
Right?
No, I try and be. This is my polished bit. This is my yeah, and she's because building a business requires you to take up space. It requires you to share your opinions. It requires you to own your self-worth and say, I would like you to pay me this money in exchange for X, Y, and Z. And all of our conditioning as women tells us to not take up space, to defer, to make other people feel better, to put the needs of other people before our own. And so it can bring up this real kind of tricksy, difficult resistance, and we don't know what the hell's going on because we're trying to build this thing, and yet it's like we've got concrete boots that we're trying to move through, because we're dragging all this stuff around. And so what I help people to do is start to tackle some of that stuff and start to do some of the unlearning and the personal development work that comes with building a business. Was that a bit of a long-winded way of
no, it was
describing it?
It was awesome.
So I work one-on-one with people, and I also have a group program called the Supernova Collective. And I am very, very soon about to launch a membership academy, which is called the Meaningful Business Academy, which is all about giving people the skills and the strategy, but also the community that they need to be able to build those businesses, because it's lonely out there. And I do believe that we all do better in community, and the internet gives us the ability to build communities and find like-minded people all across the world, like you in Texas and me in Manchester in England.
Exactly. Yeah. So I want to dive into, your business and, later on in the podcast, because you have just some wonderful things for those of us who are, looking to own our voices and learn our voices and step out into the world. And what I love about your messaging is it's very parallel to mine, in that you call it feminine conditioning, and then what I say is, the good girl rules. And so it's very similar in that you are helping women step into their businesses and look at things that may be holding them back. And then I'm helping women step into this next phase of their life and do the same thing. Like, look at these good girl rules that are keeping you from taking care of yourself, or going after something you've always wanted to do. And so I love that there's such this parallel conversation that we're having. And so that's why I was so excited to have you on the podcast.
I know there's so much overlap. There's so much synchronicity about the work that we do. And you're right. I love the way that you describe it as the good girl rules, because they're rules, but a lot of the time they're kind of unwritten rules.
Right.
I mean, I know we have the ones that our parents tell us not, our schools tell us not, our caregivers tell us. But then there's also these unwritten ones that we don't actually know are there until we see someone breach them.
Right.
And we see them torn down, or them ostracized, or something else, unpleasant happen to that person. And it's a way that communities and culture teaches that keeps the rest of us in our places. And I'm fascinated by that because as women, we can be complicit in it too. And so I love the way that you describe it as the good girl rules, because I don't know about you, but I like being a good girl. I don't like being,
right,
the kind of the rebel, because it feels good because we get approval. And it doesn't feel great when we're not getting that approval. But sometimes we need to start unpacking that, kind of going, what am I getting approved of for here, and is it worth it? What's the cost of this?
Right.
So yeah, I think the whole area is so fascinating.
It is, and it's such the time that we live in too, like you mentioned at the beginning, when we look back on this time in 20 years, and it really is, I'm finding just this interesting place for me personally. I know that I have gradually begun to become more vocal in my opinions of what's going on in the world, and also, not separated as far as Liz, the life coach, Liz, the mom, Liz, the wife, like all of that has to come together and really reflect my beliefs and who I am. It's really kind of been a struggle. I mean, not going to lie. And I think this is where I came up, like really looking at these good girl rules that were kind of holding me back, because 2017, I mean, I've mentioned this before, probably too much, but 2017 in America kind of sucked. So,
yeah, it's not great over here in England either. It's, yeah, we're dealing with the whole Brexit thing. And I think one of the things that kind of, so I like you, have wide variety of friends. And I think there is that real, so part of me goes around the world just being enraged. I mean, just furious at the things that I'm seeing, which I know isn't good for me, isn't good for my, my heart health, my mental health. But the other thing is that there is that, how do I still be a rounded human and not be putting that out all the time? So where do I, then there are times I have stopped myself from sharing something on Facebook, because I'll have the voice of somebody that I know who'll say, oh, I just think all the negativity, it just doesn't do you any good, does it? And, so I unfollow people who are just putting out negative stuff, and that sticks. And there's a little bit of me kind of goes, oh, I'm sure I'm probably one of those people he's talking about, maybe I should tone it down. So it's this really odd sensation of almost having too many big emotions to be able to contain, and not quite knowing how to deal with them appropriately. And a friend of mine who's also a client described it brilliantly. She said, it's like we all have the worst case of sunburn. And we're all just walking around and we're raw, and we're so raw. It's like if someone even comes too close to you, you're afraid they're going to touch your skin. And so we're all just jumpy. And I thought, oh my God, that's such a good way of describing it.
It is. Wow, that is a great way to describe it. The visual in itself,
I know.
Like arms extended, like stay away, stay away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do we breach that divide? Because I think at the moment people are so polarized, and one part of me thinks I really want to be able to breach that divide, but the other part of me is kind of go, well, hell no, it's outrageous what's happening. And it's a really odd feeling. I mean, how have you approached it? How do you handle it? Sorry, I shouldn't be interviewing you about myself. I'm just curious.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, so Joe, the podcaster, wants to know, and the life coach,
and we are good friends as well. So
yes. Well, I'll be quite honest. Is I don't know that I'm handling it well. I feel a lot better now than I did last year. I think last year was a lot of. It really was coming to terms with my feelings. I consider myself a very I don't want to say highly, but I consider myself a highly sensitive person to the fact that I have to be careful what I allow in. So that means a lot of news, that means watching my social media time and that kind of thing. And I think that I got totally overwhelmed last year. It really took a toll on me as far as I can see in my health. I can see in my business. The podcast was basically non-existent last year because I was having such a hard time of, coming on the podcast and trying to be all up and happy. And, and like you said, I didn't want to put a bunch of negative stuff out there, but I was having a hard time really finding my space and all that and how to show up. It's interesting because I think it really helped me. I wrote a blog post, how to care for yourself when the world is a shitstorm. And for some reason, just being able to voice that, which seems so silly, right? I mean, it's a blog post, for goodness sakes. But for some reason, I felt like that was my stake in the ground. Like, I'm having a hard time here. I know that there's others who are having a hard time. And I just want you to know that I see you and understand you. And it's okay that we feel like shit right now. And we need to not deny our own self-care because the world needs us. And for some reason, just writing, it was kind of cathartic for me, just being able to say, I'm not going to pretend that there's nothing going on, So that's kind of how I handled it or am handling it. So
I think that's perfect because I think that there's such a I hate those people who are all up in the, we don't talk about politics, or we don't talk about, anything that's going on. You have to be kind of peppy and upbeat, and especially, within the coaching industry, which is where we work, there's so many people and their lives are just perfect. And nobody's life can be that perfect. And I think it does a couple of things. It puts another layer of pressure on folks to not ask for help, to not acknowledge the negative feelings. I'm doing air quotes to myself here as I sat in my office, because there's this idea from some messed up place that we should only be feeling positive emotions, and therefore those negative ones, and the negative ones are, of course, anger and sadness and loneliness and all of those ones that I don't think we're therefore very well schooled into how to handle. We have this idea that we shouldn't feel those feelings, and therefore it adds this idea that there's something wrong with us when we do, instead of, no, actually, that's just part and parcel of being a human. I think it kind of messes with our emotional kind of scale as a culture. Because on the one hand, you see, you see all of this kind of, look at my beautiful life and look at me smiling and here's my, perfect family and all that. And yet on the other side, we have such rage in our culture at the moment. Mm-hmm. I mean, not just physical violence, although that is on the increase, but just the amount of rage that's being just thrown at our neighbours. And I'm sure it's connected to the fact that we, as a culture, don't know how to handle those negative emotions. Right. And so I think that whole thing in the coaching industry about how we should all be peppy and we should all be just policing our emotions all the time, it's actually really unhealthy. I mean, I'm not saying have a pity party. I'm not saying be Alex Jones and just, feed the rage every single day and find more things to be outraged about and more things to be fearful about. I'm not saying that at all, but I think it is unhealthy to say, you should only be putting positive stuff out there, or if I'm having a bad day, I'm not gonna share it. And one of the things for me is my business was going nowhere. I mean, just nowhere. And I hit a point of I'm too tired to keep this facade up.
Yeah.
And it's not getting me anywhere. So I may as well show up and be honest.
Well, right. And then in that, you allowed your voice to come out.
Yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh.
and what you stand for,
Uh-huh.
and combine that. And it's probably very encouraging to have people say, yeah, I get it. Like, I understand.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You are not alone in this.
Right.
You know what's the thing that Brene Brown, the writer, says? The most powerful words in the English language are "me too."
Me too. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, she says so many beautiful things.
She does. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Well, it was interesting when you were talking about the negative emotions, and I'm using quotes too as negative, because as life coaches, we don't like labeling emotions as being good or bad or negative. But what that really brought up for me was how interesting that there's a correlation of life coaches and women, right? Like, women were supposed to be happy and peppy and
caring.
Oh yeah, and caring. Yeah. And don't be the angry bossy.
Oh yeah. Yes. Well, we have such terrible words for it that just aren't applied to men. You're bossy, shrew.
Right.
Yeah.
The hell's up with that?
I know. I was talking to another friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, and I said, "Hi, how are you?" She says, "I'm just filled with rage all of the time, to the point where I never want to hear from another man ever again. I'm just looking at every movie I've ever watched and just thought, screw you, man, who made that. I've just decided I'm only going to read books by women, because it's like, who the hell's been telling us all these things for all this time?" And I kind of know what she means. It's like, I now look back at real seminal films like Fatal Attraction. Mm-hmm. What the hell?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Michael Douglas is a serial adulterer, and then he tries to persuade his mistress to have an abortion, but she's the messed up one, really. Right. And then she's going to become homicidal. Psycho. Yeah.
Right.
So, we have the term bunny boiler for just, you treated her really badly, Michael Douglas. Okay, bit extreme what you went to, but
right. But she's the bad one. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, who even came up with this idea? That have you? I mean, we're kind of going off a little bit on a tangent. I don't quite know how we got on this, but
totally fine.
Have you seen the? I think it might be Lindy West or somebody. She's a brilliant writer who writes for, I think she writes for the New York Times now, and she used to write for The Guardian. And she dissects Love Actually and every kind of romantic comedy, and basically says, in our culture, stalking is considered romantic.
Right.
Everything in Love Actually, what's his face? Who basically is mooning after Keira Knightley and shows up at her door with those cards. It's
I know, but here's the thing. I love that movie. I
do too.
That sappy movie. Yeah. And I do. I love it. I'm not gonna
No, I do too, but this is part of the culture that we're all raised in. This is the soup that we swim in.
Right.
The idea that for women we have to be pretty, and we have to be young, and we have to be super supportive, because the only images of women that we see in movies and TV until really recently were just the super supportive wife or girlfriend, even in the kooky comedies,
Yeah.
Or we are the bitch or the shrew or the terrible boss or the bunny boiler.
The bunny boiler.
This is just
yeah, those are some terrible options, right?
They are. So we can be the mother and supportive wife, or we can be the childless, heartless career woman,
right?
Or with the bunny boiler.
Yeah,
it was usually the childless, heartless career woman as well, and that's what our culture kind of, because I think it is important to kind of look at what are the things that we have within our culture in terms of the movies and TV and stuff like that. I think that is important because it soaks into our psyche so perniciously and so subtly that we don't even realize it's happening.
Exactly. And something that's was interesting to me looking back on over here, the latest presidential election, to see a strong, well-educated woman being really kind of torn to bits, just being massacred for her strength, basically, and for her opinion, and not seeing it being equal on both sides, right? It was, that was just an interesting thing to notice, I think, from being I was getting ready to say an older woman, what the heck? But, a 50-year-old woman who's seen quite a few elections in my year, and being able to look at it from that perspective of like, wow, well, it's no wonder really that me as a woman has a hard time standing up and being the voice of authority or a strong voice, So it was just an interesting thing to notice that here this is going on, and I'm just now realizing it.
Yeah, there was, I remember it was not long before the actual election itself. I remember just watching it kind of mouth agog and kind of going, how is this even a possibility that he could win compared to, regardless of what you think of her politics or whether she was the perfect candidate, there was no way she could win. She was demonized on every level. How she sounded, if she smiled, if she didn't smile, that she had kids, whether she didn't have enough kids. Was she a good wife? Was she not a good enough wife? He had an affair. That was her fault too. Her voice was too shrewd, or her voice was too deep. It really brought home.
Even her clothes were picked apart, right? Like no one would pick apart a man's suit.
No.
But then her clothing was up for debate. And it was like, what?
Yeah.
What does this have to do with anything?
There was such open violence and misogyny in the whole rhetoric around the election. It really did shock and scare me.
Yeah. Because
the only way he could win was if she was demonized. I mean, literally demonized if you listen to Alex Jones.
Right.
Yeah, I still think it's insane that he gets millions of people watch him each week. But she was demonized to the point where a boorish, repellent, multiple, just a real despicable man on every measure. With no political experience, he's not even a great businessman. He's gone bankrupt and all of that. Apart from the fact that the sexual assault allegations, the fact that he forgot things, that he's a racist, all of that stuff. The fact is, she has been demonized for years, and therefore this whole machine swung into place about the fact that basically she can't be trusted. She's a woman. She's a shrew. She's it was just horrific. And I think that sent a strong message to women everywhere. You can't win at this game.
Right.
Nobody could have been perfect enough because the rules for her were so different than to every other man who has ever I know Trump rewrote a lot of the rules for everybody, but you're absolutely right. She was treated in a way that no man has ever been treated. She was, it was just horrific. And the generational thing I thought was interesting as well, because obviously I'm in the UK, but whoever's president is still like a really big deal. Right. But most important person in the world, most powerful man in the world. And so I can remember the furore over, when Bill Clinton had the affair and she stood by him, and the way that she was, demonized for that and demonized for the fact that she was going back to work and she wasn't going to stay and bake cookies. And so, I can still remember all that. The fact that she was going back to work was considered to be a real slight to stay-at-home mums, which just seemed ridiculous. But again, in our culture, we have this thing of, there's only the position of one good woman, so we have to fight for it and knock each other. There's all that competition that's always set up, and so I found also a lot of the thing that she's not feminist enough. Quite kind of bizarre watching that as, a woman in her late 40s kind of going, well, really? Have you any idea the kind of things that she's done in her lifetime? Yeah, it was, we went off on a bit of a tangent there. But
It's okay. It's just an interesting, well, first of all, it's interesting to me as an American to realize how much our politics are over there in the UK. And
seriously, if anyone's listening to this, everyone in the world is watching America right now going, how the holy mother, how has this happened?
Exactly.
Really?
Right.
Yeah, we're all watching agog and kind of going, oh,
well, there's many
we're terrified
here that are terrified and are going,
yeah.
How the holy did this happen?
I'm sure. I'm sure. And just have somebody that openly racist as well that seems to be enabling all these other racists to be, but it's that is truly, truly terrifying.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Hey. Yeah. Ooh, have to take a deep breath after all that. Dang.
Yeah.
So if we move into talking about feminine conditioning and how you see that as being important for not only women who are starting businesses or are in business, but how do you see that as being something important for women of our age?
See, I think it's really interesting. I was thinking about our conversation. So feminine conditioning to me is about those rules and how we are conditioned to follow a certain set of rules, and that if we want to be business owners or actually even fully formed, happy, resilient women,
right.
We have to violate a lot of those rules. And I think what's really interesting about reaching kind of midlife, and so I'm 46, I'll be 47 this year, is certain things start to change that are kind of beyond your control. So, it made me realize just how much youth and prettiness is prized and is encouraged as women. And I was never somebody who was tiny or pretty when I was growing up. And so that caused me a lot of angst. I've always been quite broad-shouldered. I've always been tall. I've always been prone to, be on the heavier side. And I, had real self-esteem issues because I didn't fit in. I wasn't a little girl. I wasn't, I didn't fit into that mold. And so it took me probably to my late 20s after I had my son to kind of find my esteem with that side of myself. Mm-hmm. And then once I kind of reached my 40s and that kind of what I did have started to then change again, your body changes, your energy levels change, but also the way other people perceive you change. Mm-hmm. That can have some real kind of potentially negative stuff, but it can also be really freeing. And I know you and I have talked about this before, mm-hmm. that I sometimes do struggle with looking at my body and kind of going, how did this middle-aged body arrive? When did that happen?
Yeah.
But then at the same time, there's also something really nice to kind of go, do you know what? I don't have to shave my legs anymore if I don't want to.
Right. Yeah.
I'm only going to do it in the summer when it's warm. There is something quite freeing when you are not under that pressure to conform and to be pretty and youthful, because those two things always go together. And I'm not saying for one instance that older women can't be attractive because goodness, yeah, absolutely, we can. We're all fucking goddesses, and I think there's something so amazing about a woman who, when a woman hits that point where she just really steps in and owns her essence and herself, there's just something, just, oh my God, it's so sexy, it's so amazing, but it's not prettiness. And I think that's a really interesting point, because that ability to be pretty kind of leaves you quite often before you're ready to leave it. Yeah, I can remember having this kind of, I can't, should I really dress like that? And maybe I can't. And almost having this bit of an identity crisis. In fact, I can remember having a conversation with you, Liz, and I'd shown up to a call and I was wearing a shirt. And you said, that's a really nice shirt. And I was going, I've no idea why I bought it. I've no idea what I wear anymore. I don't know what my style is for this age. And I was having this real kind of, it sounds so silly, but a bit of an identity crisis, because so much of our identity as women is, tied up with being sexually attractive, being, and that goes into, being, would somebody want to have babies with us? Yeah, and breed with, and once that starts to go, there is, certainly for me, and I know a lot of women that you talk to, Liz, there's that moment of, but who am I now, and what is my value? My value in this culture now isn't where it was. Do I have any value? And then you can kind of go, okay, there's actually a relief in that, and I can now start to create my own value and decide what my value is, because it's almost like you're released from those rules once you hit a certain age. Am I making sense when I'm explaining this?
You are. I think it's important to point out that realization is different for everyone, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
I think that for some women, it's a very easy transition to just roll into, owning who they are at this age. And then there are some women who I feel like the whole, and this is where I found myself in my mid-40s, was really, really questioning who I was now. And really, as my kids were graduating college or high school and going off to college, and, it was kind of like, and then really realizing that, I'm not the quote pretty, young woman anymore, right? Like it's just, it's kind of like it all shifted at once, and not really. I think just the realization of it shifted.
Well, you were going through that big kind of life transition. I mean, my kids are, well, one's soon to be 18 and the other's 8. So I'm still very much in that mothering, nurturing role. And even now I look ahead and kind of go, oh God, because that is so much a part of my identity.
Your identity, right?
That I think when there's that transition as well, that can be really challenging. I'm already anticipating that. 10 years hence. But I think there is something about those. And I can't remember if you and I that had this conversation once, but it's almost like as women, we have all these different identities that are given to us. Mother, daughter, wife, ingenue, all these different roles, and it's hard to find yourself in there and to know who you are, despite all of these roles that, because we wear so many hats, so many different hats as women. We juggle so many different things, and so I think we're not encouraged to have interior lives and identities in the same way that men in our culture are. Or if we do, they're very limited to the selfish career woman or bunny boiler or nurturing stay-at-home mom. And, I think it's really hard to find yourself. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they do have this conversation, but I've never heard a man say, I just know that I am doing the thing I was always meant to do when they become a parent. And yet I've heard so many women say that.
That was what I felt. That was my, I knew I can remember being 10 years old, and, the whole question of what do you want to be when you grow up? And I wanted to be a mom. It was something like I always knew I would be, for some strange reason. I always knew I'd have boys as well.
Oh, wow. That's so fascinating.
Yeah. It was really, when I look back, I think, wow, that was really, especially since boys don't run in my family. My mom's family is a lot of
so boys. Interesting.
And then it's my sister and I. So it's not like I grew up really, well, my uncle, but anyway, I'm getting off topic. So I think that was part of it, was when, that phase, and I don't want to say ended, like, I know I will always be their mom, but there's a different level of me, with the hands-on, it's a constant, I was just talking to my sister about this. It's almost like from day one, it's almost like a daily letting go, right? Like you're letting go slowly, slowly, slowly. Yes. And so now that I've kind of let go, it really was, who am I now? Like what? And it's exactly right. Like, what is my value now?
Yeah.
And,
and I wonder if that's because as women, we're given the option that there's just one route for us. We have to choose one. Okay, there's maybe like 3 or 4 you could go, but you can only choose one. Whereas I don't think boys are given that. People can be a dad, they can be a husband, they can have a career, they can be a good buddy, they can be a son. They can, they are given much more scope in our culture than we are as women. And I think we have to change those options.
Right, which is where we are right now, right?
Yeah.
So you with your daughter, I'm sure that you are modeling, well, you are definitely modeling for her, just what it means to be growing up in this world. And that's where I feel like the responsibility is on us, is really for not just us, but for our children and our grandchildren. And like you said, in 20 years, let's look back on this and really, be proud on the work that we're doing now.
Yeah, for sure. And I was weeping watching my phone earlier when I don't know if you've seen it, but there's one of the young girls from the high school in Florida doing this amazing impassioned speech about gun control, and just kind of thought, oh my God,
right,
we've kind of let you down, but I think you might be the ones to actually do this, because Yeah, because they haven't got to the point of getting kind of tired and getting, we've seen this before, and they're like, that they are, how they're able to do that through all that grief and that but they are, and they're amazing. And I look at them and kind of think, we're going to be all right. Yeah, we're going to be all right. So, yeah,
because I was watching that this morning too. So. Yeah, it's just, the world is a shitstorm.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Goes back to my blog post.
Well, yeah, and what do you do when you're in the middle of it? But I'm also curious then as to, so for me, and I'm still in the middle of this, but this whole thing around when we let go of our prettiness, when we let go of that kind of, and there's a huge amount of relief that comes with that as well. There's the fact that you don't have to worry about getting catcalled. I mean, do you have catcalling in the state? Yeah. So and things like that, or just the level of kind of just that daily harassment that you get from kind of men, that really fades. And once you get over that kind of, what is my value anymore, there is a liberation in that. And that's not to say I don't want to be feeding the whole kind of, you see, so you enjoy it, don't you, when that happens. No, we really, really don't. Right. But there is something about so much is tied up for women about, well, we need to be attractive, we need to be deemed to be attractive in order to have any kind of currency in this culture. And once that starts to fade, once that starts to go, then there's also one of the kind of the rules is we're meant to shut up and go away, or just be grandmas, or just,
Right.
Fade into the background. I mean, that's one of the things that when Hillary Clinton came out with her book, it was like so many people go, oh, she just needs to shut up now and go back to the woods. It was like, hang on a minute. Is anyone saying that's a Mitt Romney?
Right.
I don't think so. I think he's still there, and he's still out there, and he's still allowed to talk. So, but this idea that we're meant to just fade into the background, and I think one of the things about breaking through our feminine conditioning or our good girl rules is the fact that what if we don't want to fade into the background? What if we actually want to take this time and this wisdom that we have accumulated and do something with it? Whether that be, working in our communities or building a business or going into politics or just being the mouthy woman in the corner. What if we want to do that?
Right.
And I think there is a liberation in that. And I think there's some work, because we are banging right up against our conditioning when we start to do that. Yeah.
Exactly.
I have an opinion. I have an opinion I want to share.
Mm-hmm.
I know you don't want me to share it, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Right.
That's heady, powerful, scary stuff.
It is scary. It is. And yeah, just for anything. I mean, when I think of some of my clients who even along those same lines, they feel uncomfortable standing up in their marriage for the first time, saying, no, I don't want to go to this place on vacation anymore, or I want to travel alone, I mean, just all these places where we can find ourselves wanting that. Power is not the strength. That's a better word. Want that strength. And yet we are going to be coming up against those good girl rules, that feminine conditioning of, who we are and our place and all of that. So it can go really deep beyond just, building a business or changing careers. It's just, as life coaches, we know that when it comes up in one space in our life, it's usually coming up.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
And the other thing that, as you were talking about that, about stand up in your marriage, I kind of thought, yeah, because actually, so this isn't all about, oh, women have had such a terrible time and men are pigs. And it's not about that at all, but it's that thing of, and men have been sold this pile of crap as well that tells them that, well, women, if they ask for anything or stand up for themselves, then they are a shrew or a nag. And that means they are not being a good woman. And that means they don't love you in the way they are meant to love you, because they also have this image of what a strong man is, and there's all these rules and it's only once one person starts to question those that you can start to have a dialogue and actually, improve things. Because I think you can only have a happy marriage if both parties are happy and fulfilled, and, having that kind of that freedom to actually explore and break through the norms and the rules of, well, this is what we're meant to do. We're now meant to go on vacation to the same place. We're meant to see the grandkids. We're meant to, do this and do that. We're meant to, and now is maybe the time that you can start to look at, do I want to do that? Do we want to do that? What would we like to do? How do we want our marriage to be?
Right.
So it can be a really positive move as well, to start to break through some of those rules for men too.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I don't know about you, but I kind of look back as being a parent and kind of wonder, oh my gosh, what did I unknowingly, what rules did I unknowingly put out there? And now I'm like backtracking to make sure that they, that they do think differently. And I'm sure they did. I mean, I know that I messed up plenty, but I'm sure that just by our examples, I'm hoping that comes that they grow up to be much better men. So
I think that's another example of how hard we can be, and the really high standards that we have for ourselves as well. Because, you know, I know you as a very kind of conscious, very aware, very caring and loving person who will have been doing the best that she could all the way along, as we all are. And yeah, they will have picked up some things that maybe not so great, and they'll have picked up a ton of stuff that really is, because that's, again, part of being a human. And
yeah, and then it really speaks to, like, I doubt that their father is really sitting there.
Yeah,
wondering,
is he doing all this?
No, pretty sure he's not. Pretty sure.
Yeah, because all of that emotional work is deemed to be
that's
the woman's work. Yeah,
exactly.
The emotions and the feelings, and, you know,
all that stuff, the
maintenance of the relationship, and all of that stuff. That's down to us, along with, you know, cooking the dinner and making the dentist appointments.
Yes. So let's talk about how you help your clients. And I just want to learn more about your business. I know about your business, but yeah, I'd love for you to share that with the listeners.
So I do a couple of things. So, as I say, I work with people who are service-based professionals, so like life coaches, healers, consultants, and things like that. And one of the big things there's two things that people find. One is there's so many strategies out there around all the things they could be doing to build their business that it just gets super overwhelming. So one of the things that I'm really good at doing is helping people to streamline that, so they know, okay, this is what you focus on now, and then this, and then this, and then this, so that they have some kind of clarity, and in there they can get out of that overwhelm and start to develop their confidence and get some momentum going and get some traction. But then the other equally important piece is being able to to tackle the blocks as they come up, because it's one thing knowing what you need to do. It's another thing actually doing it. So if we could just get a blueprint or get some information, and somebody says, do this, and then that, and then that, and we could follow it with no problem, then what was that phrase? We'd all be skinny billionaires. I think that's an Anthony Robbins phrase.
Yes.
But we don't. So, I may help somebody, say, design their website and do a marketing plan. And I work from a place that I call ethical marketing. So I don't do anything, sleazy. It's all very much kind of aligned and heart-centered, and we don't do any nasty manipulative stuff. But even then, you start to be able to market your business. And that's where so many women come up against this wall, because to market your business, especially if your business is you, means you have to get visible. You have to tell people about your service. You have to own the value that you provide. You have to ask people for money for the value that you provide. And you are the face of your business, because you are your business. And that brings us smack up against all of that feminine conditioning that we have.
Right.
And so the other, I would say probably even more important piece of my work is, well, how do we tackle those things? How do we deal with those things as and when they arrive, so that you can start to move forwards and you can start to become more comfortable being visible. You can start to become more comfortable marketing, so that you can be putting yourself out there. And in fact, I wouldn't recommend you do it in a kind of, real jazz hands. Hey, look at me, buy my thing, which I think is what a lot of women think they're going to have to do.
Right.
And it's not at all. It's about finding ways of using our existing strengths, like conversation, like relationship building, like community, so that we can start to do some of that internal work and let people know how we can help them. Because if you're an amazing life coach, Liz, then I want everyone who needs an amazing life coach to know about you, because other people need your help. I've got a client at the moment, the one I was telling you about, has this amazing analogy for It's like we've all got this really bad sunburn at the moment.
Right.
She wants to be, well, she is starting to promote herself as a feminist life coach for people who are just feeling weighed down by the weight of all the horribleness that is going on in Trump's America. She wants to work with progressive women who want to be doing some activism, who want to be doing some good in the world, but just feel stuck because they're so weighed down by all the awfulness. Mm-hmm. I've got another client who is a creativity coach and wants to help adults reconnect that creative side of them, that sense of play. I've got somebody else who wants to help holistic business owners and body workers, particularly kind of yoga teachers, massage therapists and things like that, really do the business side of their business, like things like accounts and finance and planning and all of that stuff, right, so that they can serve more clients and things. And so they're the type of people that I tend to work with, mm-hmm, because I want them to see the value of what it is that they do and to find ways of promoting it and building a sustainable business. Mm-hmm. And it's because I honestly think we need more healers, we need more coaches, we need more people doing this work. And, you know, we need women who are able to earn decent amounts of money, because it's only through financial power that we get any cultural power.
Yeah.
You know, we know the workplace is fairly dire for women. We're still paid way less than our male counterparts. They are not family-friendly places. They were not originally designed for women. They're still based on some 1950s idea of, you know, workers were going to have a wife at home who are able to, you know, take care of all the domestic right things. And yet actually all that's happened is we went into the workplace, we still had the children, we were still expected to do the job and right carry on as if we didn't have kids or a family, and we've still, you know, do the bulk of the housework. So that kind of working pattern just simply doesn't work for a lot of us. And so many women look at running their own business as an alternative. And so I want them to be able to thrive while they do that, because otherwise we may as well, you know, well otherwise we're always going to be in that second position.
Right.
And so, yeah, sorry that I'm kind of passionate about what I do.
No, I love it. And what a vision that came to me when you were speaking was like this, you know, when you throw a rock into standing water and there's like these ripples that go out. And so I'm loving this vision of you helping women, and then that creates another ripple where these women are helping other women. And it's just such this, and that's how I feel about the work that I do too. You know, yeah. I've come to this place in my life and I want to help other women come to their own, you know, step into their own, I think you've said it, brilliance, you know, step into who they are, step into their brilliance, and then help other people. And we are creating these wonderful ripples out into the world.
Yeah.
That the world needs. Damn it.
Oh, God, does the world need it right now?
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
And in a way, we do it in a way that kind of plays to our strengths already, because, you know, like I say, we, you know, as women, we have been raised on connecting with people, on, you know, using empathy, on those kind of social connections. And so we can build businesses that way, and we can change the world if we do that, because the ripple effect could be enormous. Yeah. And that's why we need to, you know, despite the discomfort around it, we all need to claim our voice and claim our space in the world, and, you know, share our opinions and share our wisdom, especially us older birds, because, you know, we have some. You know, we've lived a life, and, you know,
right,
we've learned some things along the way.
Yes, we have. Thank goodness.
Yes, we may have learned them the hard way, a lot of those lessons, but
right.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, it was so great to have this time to speak with you. And I am going to have links on how to connect with you in the show notes, so everybody will be able to go over there. I hope, listeners, you'll go over and check out Joe Casey at joecasey.com. And you have a wonderful opt-in and a guide. It's 31 meaningful marketing actions.
I do, yeah.
Everybody will grab. All my listeners who are business owners and are looking to be able to put yourself out there in a way that is not sleazy and really comes from the heart. And also be sure to go over and listen to Joe's podcast, the Meaningful Business Podcast. Is that correct? Because you just
yeah, it is the Meaningful Business Podcast, and we have lots of deep and meaningful conversations around that about what it means to have a meaningful business. And I talk to lots of women around what made them start their business, what their big why is behind it. We also have episodes where kind of sharing techniques and tips on the practical side of building your business and things like that. But it's the conversations really that always make my heart sing, because it's just amazing when you can just really get to know someone about this is why they're doing this, and it's just glorious. A bit like what you do.
Oh, thank you. So like I said, I will have all the links over at the show notes. And Joe, this was just so great. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been just lovely. It was like chatting to an old friend. In fact, it was.